You entered cannabis before most people even believed it would become a real global industry. Looking back, what was the moment where you realized this wasn't a trend, but a massive long-term business opportunity? And given your story, I mean, I think this is a perfect question for you.
Honestly, when I got into this, I was driving to work one day and I was living in a small city in Canada, installing cameras in prisons and hospitals. I was a security integrator, and I literally heard on the radio that there was a company that was going to be buying a rundown chocolate factory and turning it into medical marijuana, and that was back in 2013. And at that time, I was like, "A, what's medical marijuana?" And there's a Hershey factory, like literally right beside where I live. So I think it was like that moment when Canada legalized on a medical platform back in 2013. I think gave me a little bit of insight. I was like, wow, this is something that I grew up consuming. This was something that my parents did smoke back in Woodstock, but then were there, they were like, anyone that's smoking weed is not going to get anywhere. And now here we were as a country getting ready to legalize medically. And that was like my first like aha moment, which led me to follow up with the next 3 years of installing security systems into the first legal medical grows in Canada. And then I would say the second aha moment was, after Canada got ready to adult use. So we ran medical for 4 years. And it was when I got a random DM on LinkedIn from this other gentleman that said, "Hey, I've been following your career over the last 3 years, and I know you're this security cannabis guru, and I'd love to put a couple of people together and start a firm that would, be this inflection, driver of actually writing applications." And back at the end of 2016, there was only 50 cultivators, licensed growers in Canada on the medical side. And if you fast forward to today, there's over 1,000. So again, I was at the right place at the right time. And then that DM turned into the forming of the compliance company that we started in 2016, which then went, like a rocket ship and, grew from me and three guys to 115 employees in 3 years. And writing regulations and licenses in 10 different countries. So I think I've had two aha moments, sort of like this was going to be something. Yeah, so those are sort of two big
What
moments in my career.
when you got that DM, what was your like initial reaction? We're like, oh, this is interesting. Were you confused? We're like, amazing. Do you remember what was that initial
I
one?
remember like there's a very, very, first of all, I still have the DM, so offline I'll send you the DM.
Uh-huh.
And it was like I was very, at the time I had spent 3 years installing security systems in some of the coldest places in Canada. So some of these early grows were being built in like remote locations. So when I first saw that DM, I was like, oh man, can I really stop like running off to bum nowhere Canada for like 3 weeks at a time in minus 40 degrees to stand on a ladder and install cameras. So that was my first thing, like, oh wow, I can stop like running around. And because at the time he really, the gentleman approached me, he's like, I just want you to like design the systems. You don't got, he knew I was in like northern Ontario and like southernmost part of like Alberta and really, really cool places. Um so yeah, so he had offered me that position. And yeah, and then we were off to the races. And it was actually my I remember I'd give him this giant list of demands that I had wanted. I really would have left for anything because I was so tired of doing all these installs. And then like I think in the same DM he was like, yeah, for sure, whatever you want, like let's start this. And then I quit the security company in December of 2016, and we had like officially launched what was then known as Cannabis Compliance Inc. or abbreviated CCI in
Mhm.
April of 2017 in Berlin at the first ever ICBC conference. That was the
Per-
first time that we had made like a public appearance. We had traveled and we were like, and we first started talking about like a full compliance firm that was able to like specialize in writing regulations in any country. that it really just boiled down to rules and regulations. And if you had enough smart people in a room, you could figure out how to write an SOP for whatever. So that was the birth of the compliance company.
Wow. And
Yeah,
so when talk about obviously you mentioned compliance. So you've worked across compliance, licensing,
yeah,
security systems, business
yeah,
development now even, and brokering deals. So when you look at all of the experience from your perspective, what separates the companies that actually succeed in cannabis from the ones that burn cash and disappear?
yeah. Like it sounds so cheesy, but it's like it's life. It's like what makes a successful company that I work with is what makes me successful. It's relationships, reputation, and execution. It's like who do you know? What have you done with those people? And then what do other people say about what you've done? It's like
Mm,
it's like that's why people answer my emails, that's why people answer like my phone. It's so like that's what differentiates. It's like what cannabis companies are aligned properly, who have the people right working in the companies, what are their reputations in the either state or in the country. I find cannabis, you have like one strike. This industry is so tightly knit.
mm.
It's a small industry in a giant world, and like everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and it's like when you swim over, word travels quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So like that, it's something that I learned when we were running the compliance company. Like we were the most expensive firm, and like I would stand there at a table across from someone else, and I was like, "This is what we charge to file the application, and we're going to get your application." I'm like, and they were like, "Well, how do you know that?" I said, "Because back at headquarters, I have 75 of the smartest like regulatory people that are trapped in a room happily,
Mm.
and they're not here. It's like my job is to meet you, to give you the comfort that what is behind me is supporting you. So it's really about like what makes those successful cannabis companies are the ones that have great reputations, great relationships, internal, and like that the janitor and the CEO mop the floor the same way.
Mm.
Like super important. Like there had like that message and culture has to bleed from top down. And it's like you can tell when that's not like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I assume that, because of everything that you've done and given the focus that you've had on relationship, I figure that's where your international experience came from as well. It's like working with all of these different countries, different states, and being all around the world. And a lot of people outside the industry don't realize how complicated cannabis regulation really is,
Yeah.
especially now that we're expanding so much. But you've helped companies across more than 10 countries. So
Yep.
what's one behind the scenes reality about global cannabis that would shock most people?
I don't know if it would shock most people, but really like cannabis has always fit into another box that it had existed before cannabis. And what I mean by that is like a great example is what's going on in the United States right now. They originally classified cannabis with heroin, cocaine, and opiates, and now they're moving it down to a Schedule 3 and to the same category as like Tylenol. So like these schedules
Mm,
existed, right, before cannabis was even brought into the equation. So like really, if you're in an emerging market that is being regulated, first of all, it's a good thing.
mm,
Second of all, like there's a script. And what I'm trying to say by that is like there's no secret to figure out cannabis regulations. You literally need to like just follow the guideline of the box that it's in. And a great example of that is what's going on in the States right now because I'm helping tons of companies go from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, right?
mhm,
So like in their Schedule 1 when they're with heroin and cocaine and all this stuff, like they knew like they have 80% taxes because if you have an opioid factory, you pay 80% in taxes, but you're backed by big pharma, so who gives it? So like trying to educate the new cannabis license holders in the States about this and saying like this is exactly what's going on in the States is exactly what's happened in Canada. So I
mm,
think something that's going to shock, that should shock the Americans right now is like this is a direct copy and paste. So the government, the United States government, is literally looking for you to take this substance and like place it and hold it and interact with it the same way you would as a Schedule One drug. So when you have a schedule, even a Schedule One drug, like you need to have like a safe facility to store inventory. So a lot of these, I'll give a great example. There's 4,000 license holders in California. There's only 500 of them that are medical, which means there's 3,500 that are not medical that don't hold that will not be able to apply for this DEA unless
Mm,
they amend their license. So like all those 550 something medical holders are already ahead of the game. So they already have like secure storage. They already have those things. So what I would say is like in any existing market that is getting cannabis regulated, look at the playbook that already exists and all your cheat codes are in there because
mm,
there's standards, there's SOPs that exist, and you're just essentially taking the API and putting it into that like box. Doesn't matter if it's Tylenol or like cannabis. If you're making Tylenol and you're done your finished product, they want it in like a secure vault or whatever till it's picked up to be shipped to a pharmacy or whatever it is. It's the same thing with cannabis and all this regulations that's coming in the States. Um, yeah. And I would say, and the other thing I would say is it's very hard for lawyers and accountants to write SOPs, standard operating procedures for like deviation. It's a game that we played in Canada for a very long time where there was like a few different people, a few different firms that could write an application that Health Canada would deem worthy of a license. And like less than 50% of the time, the ones that got stuck in the queues were all these lawyers, all these accountants. Like a lawyer is good in court. He doesn't, not a lot of lawyers know like an SOP for destruction of plant matter or understand like transport of tissue culture. But
yeah.
like, you have to go to like a subject matter expert. And that's really what we developed CCI into. We hired the most cannabis knowledge people. And then when there were none of those left, I was like, let's go pull from pharma. Like some of our best sales guys we have from Red Bull, from Heineken, from Big Tobacco, and like these regulated industries. So any like emerging cannabis market, I would say like anyone that's looking for licenses, make sure you're aligning yourselves with like regulatory people.
Mm. Yeah, it makes sense. Also, that is actually one of the things that we as a company also are really, really focused on, like especially when we're hiring people for the job. The main thing is like you can be a professional as much as you want. You can have a bunch of experience all around the world with everything. We need someone that has cannabis experience, specific cannabis experience, because outside of that, it's going to be very hard for you to get into understanding what the cannabis market is right now. And that is something that I really feel like is one of the things that also sort of kind of makes us stand out from other standard outsourcing companies or whatever it is, because it's like we need specific guys that had cannabis experience,
Right.
period. And that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely important. Um, so help me out with this next question because I wanted to make sure that I have my facts straight. So you were part of CCI before it was acquired by Lloyd, right?
Yeah. So I was part of the founding team. So it was me and three guys.
And
And
so
then, yeah.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to, because this is obviously a huge milestone, right? This is extremely big. What did the experience teach you about where cannabis is heading from a corporate and institutional standpoint? Because a lot of conversations that I had with a bunch of people from the industry is like how the corporate is affecting cannabis, vice versa, and what's going on with the whole cannabis culture slash cannabis spirit and stuff like that. And that's what I wanted to hear from you as well.
I mean, like again, you have no choice with when all these countries are regulating or are legalizing.
Mm,
Like you have to adult up. And again, it goes back to this whole thing that's going on in the States right now. Like if you want to take advantage of this adult use market and expenses and taxes and safe banking, then you need to like follow rules and regulations. So like like this is it's you're on the bus or you're under the wheels with this. This train is going, and you like it's I don't want to say the black market and legacy is going to ever like not exist. I just think that there's room for like there's nothing there's culture and there's everything that exists in California in a regulated market never went away because it was regulated. So what I would
Mm,
say is like there's further regulation coming, right? I mean, the
mm,
states are going to legalize. Eventually, they'll do interstate commerce. Eventually, if they get their standards in order, will be able to be like Canada. You know, I forget what the number was, 4,000, 40,000 metric tons shipped into international markets from Canada. But again, like those license holders in Canada pay their taxes. You know, they're on they're like grown up businesses. So what I would say is, you know, the corporate world is coming, and you either are going to be a part of it or you're going to be left out of it.
mm.
So, and I think this first thing in the States is a first indication of who's going to be like, I don't want to register for this because I'm seeing it now. I have a lot of California companies that I'm dealing with. They're like, nah, we don't want to give our information to the DEA and they're going to do this and they're going to that. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is what it takes to get banking. You know what I mean? Like, do you want to still have the duffel bags under your bed and garbage bags on your windows and worry about who's coming to your door? Or do you want to have Canada and like have the government write your purchase orders for your wholesale business? Like
Wow.
that's the way it's going to roll out here, right? Like, so you either adult up and get, and again, like there's a lot of benefits with this changeover. So I wouldn't say as much as it's going to be like corporate cannabis as it is regulated cannabis.
Mm.
So, you know, I think you have to pick your battles with what you want to like die on the sword for, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
And also, I mean, it's a very speedy market, and if you also have to be fast in every aspect of it, whether that's, like new things coming into it, whether that's the current things that are sort of expanding, changing, moving, you have to just make sure you're following. If you're not, then you're out. And I think that you really made a very good point there. It's like at the end of the day, you might not even have a choice. So
Right.
do it, figure it out.
That's why it goes back to my whole like relationships thing. Is like you're it's so important about like who you're talking to, right? Like who's advising you, who you're talking to, who you're selling to. It's everything. That's why like I have this other saying, you know, you're the average of the five people you surround yourself with. So like choose wisely. You know, like you gotta who am I spending my time with? Who am I like tying my, you know, time what I tie my horse to? That's the saying. Anyways, yeah, it's super important because again, you have like one shot in this industry, and yeah, you want to be around doing this for a while.
No, I completely agree. And also, speaking of the relationships and ultimately, again, the way that you're sort of everywhere in the industry. So, as someone who talks to operators, brands, investors, executives, and so on constantly through Canna Broker, when you look at everything and when go fish a little bit in the future, where do you honestly think the cannabis industry is headed in the next 3 to 5 years? Who's going to win and who's in trouble? If we take away this aspect of what you talked about just now, which
Yeah,
is follow, don't follow, and stuff like that.
yeah. Well-established brands, multi-state brands, multi-country brands, brands that have established retail footprint, that understand supply chain, that understand what it takes to pack like 50 cases of like 3.5 Mylar bags. You know what I mean? Someone understands how to ship 100,000 vape carts wholesale on a pallet to here to there. I think once the States gets their stuff in line, I think once Germany gets their stuff in line, like you're going to see like a full like supply chain of CPG like goods and trade and commerce. And I think, you know, you'll have like supply chains that'll be international. I think Canada is going to play a huge role while the United States gets all their stuff together. That's why I have a huge interest right now to bring a lot of American brands into Canada and then start immediately exporting those brands on the German and the medical platforms. But the German and the medical platforms are looking for established brands that have stories to tell that they can then start telling these stories to markets that don't exist, right?
Mm.
So I think that's hugely important. Is like get your like company story together, be existing in legal markets and as many as you can, and have like good relationships in those markets because like those international markets will come looking for the stories to tell.
And Mike, so when you talk to brands
Yeah.
that you see have potential to become one of these, and how accepting are they of what you're suggesting, of what your idea is, and what you feel like is what's going to be good for them? How hard it is for you to negotiate them or make them follow what you're saying?
Like right now, not at all. Look at the brand lineup for Mary Jane's in Berlin in June.
Mm.
Every freaking sticker that's on this wall is at Mary Jane's, and there's no adult use market in Germany.
Mm.
It's medical. So like every single one, every single brand that I'm talking to, and I'm speaking to the Wizard Trees and the Preferred Gardens and the Alien Labs, like that from my experience is like that's the pathway now is get into Canada, get into a few hundred stores, build that brand because in like 3 years, like well, there's going to be some type of hybrid in Germany, whether it's through consumption lounges and pharmacies and this and that, where like they'll be exporting pallets of like finished goods into Germany for distribution. So that's my like that's why I go to California lately. At the ICBC show in April, there was a ton of brands that we're speaking to now. So they also see the writing on the wall. And even as the States does this whole rescheduling, they're still like 3 to 5 years away from being able to move anything out of their country, I think, at best. Interstate to ship stuff from California to Michigan, yes, that's going to happen and the DEA is going to regulate it. But again, Canada was medical for almost 5 years. Then it was adult use. States is doing the same thing. It's the same playbook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As you said, copy paste all over.
Copy paste. There's a DEA portal application, the same way Health Canada had a DEA portal application. It's hysterical. I'm literally living through that saying, if I was able to go back in time knowing what I know now, this is literally me going back to like 10 years ago or whatever it is, knowing what I know now. That's why it's really funny for me. That's why I'm going to California next week. I'm sitting down with I think 10 of the biggest brands, excuse me, to like really explain to them. I'm like, and we've been talking to a bunch of them over the last like 3 4 weeks, and they're like, "Yeah, this is what it says." I'm like, "I know. This is what they said." They're like, "We have to do all this." I'm like, oh, "I know. This is exactly what we did." So, yeah, it's a fun place to be right now.
Yeah, but it's also good for you because you've been
It's
there
amazing. It's
and you're
amazing.
yeah, I love that.
It's
Love that.
amazing. I was on a phone with an MSO this morning who was like, "Our lawyer said this." I was like, can you get your lawyer on your phone with me? He doesn't want to talk to you. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I was like, what is it? Because they don't want to charge me. I was like, he doesn't want to talk to you. I'm like, he's scared of me. The look. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, because again, it's lawyers are very well in a court of law. They're very bad in a pharmaceutical grade facility. Same thing with an
Mm.
accountant. Take me an accountant when I get an audit, not when I got a regulator knock on a door and ask me to see SOP for this. And can you pull up camera 4 for grow room 3 2 weeks ago? Like that's where you have to have like proper compliance knowledge.
Mm. Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Mike,
Mm.
as always, it was extremely useful talking to you because
Yes.
a bunch of knowledge just came out and like, okay, I love every single thing about this one. Can you tell whoever's viewing where they can find you on social media?
Yes, for sure. First of all, thank you so much. And I think I have to make my way out to Serbia. Wink, wink. Right? That's yes.
Although we're going to
You
be
can find
interviewing you probably very soon, so yeah.
Okay, good. You can find me on Instagram at the Canna Broker. So that's no E, it's the Canna Broker. I'm on LinkedIn, Michael Elkin. And yeah, you can catch me any like major trade show that's happening over the next like 6 months in North America. And yeah, really thank you so much for the opportunity speaking to you and love the connection.
Extreme pleasure, my guy, and really looking forward to meeting you again in
Yes.
person. Enjoy the rest of the day,
Thank you,
and don't
brother.
We'll chat soon.